Welcome back to Season 1, Episode 2 of Minihanedom. I am your host, Visionless Dave. I was going to be joined by Tony Cass and the one, the only Blind Owl this week. Two of the heavy hitters, but honestly, not a lot of meat on the bone with the shows this week, in my opinion. So I'm going to save my heavy hitters for a week when we got a little more going on. Just give you a general layout of the show. We'll discuss kind of just my overall view of the week. Not a lot of specific things to go into as far as show themes. Last week we kind of covered the unveiling of the tour, the developing situation of the tour. Obviously did some journalism on that ticket scandal. The journalism was pretty solid, but you don't always get a response. It seems the powers that be kind of lack integrity when it comes to this specific issue. Maybe a little bit out of touch, maybe just doesn't care, but it is what it is. Let's see. When I listen to the shows, I haven't done a wrap-up show in a while, so I'm kind of just getting back used to listening to the shows through a wrap-up perspective, and I definitely have realized I'm way more critical of the shows when I know I'm doing a wrap-up. Kind of jotting little notes here and there. I'm basically subconsciously or unknowingly, I think I found myself listening for things that bother me, that I don't like, which probably isn't the healthiest way to listen to the show. But I mean, honestly, who wants to hear someone just talk about how great everything is? If you want to do that, you can head over and listen to the guys across the street. I think you all know who I'm talking about. We'll get into them later in the show. We'll touch on Tommy Shattuck, who I think was the ace of the week. A+ trolling from Tommy Shattuck, kind of stuffed Dave and Kirk in a locker. We'll get to the every week segments like gripes and shout outs. But without further ado, we'll get started. But first, I want to tell you about the presenting sponsor this week. You heard me mention them earlier, Cast and Owl. This ad is brought to you by the Cast and Owl investigative firm. These guys are my personal fact checkers. I don't use anybody else. When I have a theory, usually when my report's in the final stages or I have a real specific point of action, I'll hop in the DMs to Cast and Owl, get them on the case, and I'd say response time usually less than an hour. And these guys are the best in the business. So looking forward to having them on the show at some point. But yeah, that's this week's presenting sponsor. All right, so overall, it was discussed on this show. There was discussion about the breaded chicken cutlet Parmesan versus just a grilled chicken Parmesan. And I think this week's shows was really a grilled chicken week. Bland, nothing special. Callers were bad. No kind of new narratives were formed. Not necessarily bad shows where I'm skipping through or not wanting to listen, but just kind of, time passers. Definitely some good moments. As I mentioned, Tommy Shattuck came in from the top ropes. As a guy who likes to instigate and kind of mess with people, I really appreciate that move from Shattuck. I mean, he had Kirk convinced. He had me as a listener convinced. I'm still not even sure if he actually was in on Fred Couples. But it seems like he just made it up just to stuff Dave in a locker. And I mean, this guy's got Dave's number. He's been stuffing him in lockers for years now. Now, I did see on Twitter, Dave tried to minimize it as just a small victory, not really a one war, but this was a decisive victory from Shattuck. I mean, really impressive stuff. I thought this was the highlight of the week, which is a good thing. But then when you think about it, if Tom Shattuck is the highlight of the week, I think that kind of lends credence to my grilled chicken theory. Another thing discussed on the show, and I've heard it discussed a lot of places, not a golf guy. I think it's Phil Mickelson, who is considering taking Saudi money to play with their tour. Now, this is a debate that I've seen unfold in regards to English Premier League soccer. Recently, Newcastle was bought by Saudi Arabians. Kind of a mixed reaction when it happened. Their fans are obviously thrilled because they went from being a small, kind of like a Green Bay Packer team, to having just the richest owners in the league, I think by 10x. So this is a lot of money. It can change the course of the club. But the rest of the people who don't benefit from it, it's real easy to kind of pick it apart and say, oh, they're committing atrocities against journalists, against gay people, women's rights. But for me, and it's hard to do in the moment, anytime these moral situations come up where somebody has to take the moral high ground and you're not someone directly being negatively affected from taking that moral high ground, meaning you're not a Newcastle fan who gets, this excitement around their club, which may sound trivial to some people, but there's not much else going on in Newcastle, England. It's old club since the 1800s. So people really live and die with it. It's great for the economy, lifts everybody up. And I just have an issue knowing when it's easy for me to criticize something on moral ground. If I have no skin in the game, then I try to just stay out of it, because there's going to be other things that happen that I think, well, this shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. And it's really just, I think, a case of I'm not benefiting or being hurt from it. So it's easy just to toss out opinion. I try to just stay hands off with everything. I mean, whether or not the guy takes the money, that doesn't really change anything in Saudi Arabia. I don't think it legitimizes it like some people might say. As I would think Kirk, as someone who's a libertarian, would want to stay out of people's pockets. You can certainly judge him for taking this money, but I don't think he should be looked at just because he takes Saudi money doesn't mean he hates gay people or condones the killing of gay people. I think if you looked into it, there's probably a lot of prominent businesses and businessmen and people in this country who do business with Saudi Arabia and don't get that same criticism. So it's tough for me. It's a bad situation, but I could see myself being him and just, that's generational wealth. Why shouldn't you be allowed to go get it? And you'll have to put up with a little bit of bullshit, but it is what it is. Give me all the blood money. I'll take it all. And it kind of reminds me, the tickets for this Mississippi show, I think if you're going, you have blood on your hands, because these are blood tickets. My jaw hit the ground this week when Wink, Texas guy called and said he was not able to get a ticket for the show. And that's when it bothers me, when there was a competitive disadvantage based on nothing more than personal relationships, ego stroking, and unfair power dynamics. Basically rewarding people who are just sucking Cullinane's dick. And at the end of the day, it's Kirk's show. He has the right to just say, I don't care about that. I'm unfair. But I think he needs to acknowledge that. He kind of did under his breath this week, said he didn't care about it. Is it the biggest deal in the world? No. Is it hypocrisy? Yes. I did hear Red say that Steve used to do this. I would like 1 ounce of proof of that. I'll get into it later, because I have a whole list of dumb things Red has said this week. But yeah, those tickets have blood on them. And if you go, you basically condone inequality and just corruption. You're basically condoning corruption. My favorite segment here, we'll get into gripes after I take a drink here. A lot of gripes this week. Like I said, I listen way more critically when I know I'm going to be doing a show. First thing I want to get to, this will just be a quick one. Kirk's take that Kaepernick will be in the Hall of Fame. Lazy take, dumb take, stupid take, won't happen. I don't think as many of the guys in the Hall of Fame, kind of older players, both black and white, even current players, I don't think they're as pro Kaepernick as you would think, especially the people that are in the council for voting and deciding what initiatives the Hall of Fame is going to do. The only thing I will say is they just got a new president in there. So you never know if a guy just wants to buy some credit for a while, but he'll never go in with a bust. He won't get the jacket. He might have, in the museum, he'll probably have his whole own section there, but he won't get a bust. He won't be in the Hall of Fame. They won't budge on that. It's all on-field production. A little bit of politics involved, actually a lot of politics. I've been following it really closely this past year. A lot of politics, kind of a fucked up whole organization. But dumb take. Moving on. Dave Cullinane. So David from Hull. Everybody knows Daver of Talking Loud, Saying Nothing. False Nine on the KMN network with Buddy from Kirkenoff. Great guy. He reached out to me earlier in the week and said, hey, I have this idea for a show. Basically, it's a show where I'm just going to talk about myself because that's all I do on my other shows. Basically, just tell stories about myself, talk over people, give my ideas. Like maybe call it Daver Talking Daver or something. I just need a guy to sit there while I talk about myself. Would you be interested in doing that? I said, of course. I'd love to do that. DM Cullinane, figure it all out. So he sends Cullinane a DM, and I want to say it was multiple days unanswered. That's not good. I understand Dave's busy. At least hit the guy with a reply. Say, I'll get back to you next week on this, or sounds good. We'll figure it out next week. Something. It takes seconds. The guy's addicted to Twitter just like the rest of us. You know he saw it. Forget, I don't know. Just think maybe a little content, not chasing everything down. Definitely not channeling his inner Gary V. I mean, Gary V would have been all over that shit. He would have fucking sent the fuck out of that DM back and fucking figured it the fuck out, basically. So, yellow card, Cullinane. I'll show him a yellow, not a straight red, nothing malicious in it. Just let's go. Tighten up. Let's get it going. All right. I want to talk about Minihanedom. The guys across the street, the great show with Red and Metters, of which I enjoy. I do think it's a little excessive to go more than once a week, and it waters down the show. So if I could give Metters advice, which I did, I would say don't do that again. Not a good look. Keep it once a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Just encapsulate the whole week, unless there's something really crazy that happens. But to wrap up Tuesday's show on Tuesday, just shows that you're a little hungry for the clout. Maybe it's more about you than the show. I mean, I'm not here for myself. I'm here for the show. It's a good show. I listened to it. I was told I would be allowed on it. Never invited. Look, the only reason I'm doing a show is because they wouldn't let me on their show. It's kind of the reason for the title. It's a hilarious joke. It won't get old. Probably end up changing the title kind of soon. But they won't invite me on their show. They claim I have an open invite, but they just don't invite me to recordings. They've kind of TB12 Garoppolo'd me, where I've been kicked out of the facility. I have good relations with both of them. I think with Red, probably 80% of the stuff we disagree on, but the 20% we agree on, we really agree on. And I think there are a lot of fundamental values, but half the shit that comes out of that guy's mouth is so bad. And Metters, he really doesn't push back at all. Red just basically sucks Cullinane's dick, and Metters basically just narrates his daydreams about him and Kirk going nuts to butts on a motorcycle and like making podcasts together. And then I think he was talking about he wants his kids to be friends with Kirk's kids. Just they need someone on that show that will call that out in the moment, push back on some of this Cullinane propaganda, and just I think a wrap-up show is best with three voices. I loved the KMS rundown back in the day. Three voices, three different opinions. It's nice. It's balanced. It's perfectly unbalanced, which makes it balanced. But I'd love to go on the show. I'd probably still keep this show just to do special projects. But as of now, I'm being shut out. One thing I did hear Red say earlier on his show was that his idea for exciting content was to get a climate change scientist to come on and have Kirk debate a climate change scientist. He thought that would be good content. There was very little pushback on that. That is one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. That's an episode I probably wouldn't even listen to. Maybe if we made Cullinane debate the guy, that could be interesting because he's such a dummy, but it would be funny. You just swear at him, but no, that wouldn't even be funny either. Just a dumb idea. He was also very critical of Erica Nardini, who, say what you want about her, Kirk's kind of created this false narrative that she's trying to create distance between her and Barstool because she changed her Twitter handle from like Nardini to Erica. It never had Barstool in it before. It still doesn't. it's very easy to look past the fact that she took a $15 million company and I think sold it for $450 million in 3 years. So I don't like her as a person, but I think she puts up with a lot of shit and she deserves a lot of credit. There's not a lot of people that would take that job head on and deal with all the bullshit that comes along with it when she could probably have a great job at some other corporation. Me and Nardini actually go way back. Fun story. Maybe I'll get to it one day. Not really. What's something? Okay, another dumb thing he said. He had this like hard-hitting investigative rant about. He's like, I think Kirk's source at EEI might be Mutt. It's like that's the kind of journalism that's going on over there. That show is lacking a journalist. They need someone with journalistic integrity, someone who can do comprehensive investigations, can relay it accurately, without bias, diligently, in a timely manner. So, moral of the story, let's do this. Let's party. Let's do a show. Moving on, I'm going to get to shout outs. Great week on Twitter for my guy, Ban Drew. He is a Ravens fan. Funny guy, but he basically convinced half of Ravens Twitter, including several blue check marks, that Hollywood Brown was retiring to start a Twitch streaming career. And there were blue check marks retweeting it saying, I have sources kind of saying this is something to keep an eye on. So it just shows you that some of these NFL insiders are so full of shit. Very funny, very good work by him. Similar to the Shattuck thing, I respect good trolling. I respect good engagement. A+ on the week for Ban Drew. I also want to give a shout out to my dear friend Craig. A very good show of Blind Mike Project, of whatever else he has going on, Bruce Mittman stuff. This is a guy who started producing his own show. They've been going at it pretty consistently, almost, I want to say, for 2 years. Had the opportunity to start doing Blind Mike's show. He is the perfect fit for that. I can't even imagine another producer on Blind Mike Project. They have good chemistry. They have similar interests. He's consistent. He's there. He does it. It is hard to be that consistent on a podcast when it's a side hustle, especially something like Blind Mike Project, where he's not making a lot of money, if any. He finally got to put in his 2 weeks at his real life job, and he's going full time into podcasting. So that right there, folks, is self-taught, hard work, determination, and that is the American dream. So Craig is actually the American of the week. However, if Very Good Show starts to suffer, I'm going to be on his ass. So just take that as a warning. Last segment we'll get to just some listener questions. Next show, I tweeted out this week. Just shoot me some listener questions, slide in the DMs. Let me know what you want to ask me, what you want to hear me talk about. But this first one comes from Ziggy Robinson, who I haven't heard much from recently. But he said, over under for how long Quantum Week Chris will still be on the main show. In my opinion, he's getting a little stale, and I think we need to change it up. I set the value at 6 weeks. Wow. Super critical from Ziggy. Ziggy is sick of Chris. Me, I've explained it time and time again. I like Chris as a person, not a movie guy. The game, the segment's getting a little low. Let's spice it up. Let's stay on his feet. He is a good podcaster. He just needs, in my eyes, to figure out how to stay fresh, before things get stale. Just keep it fresh. Little things. They're not my favorite shows, but they're all shows that I don't want to listen to. A little heavy on the podcast recap stuff, but I think that will be gone soon, and we'll move past that. Moving on to the next question. This is from someone who has reemerged in the universe, a particular condiment. I won't say his name, but he said, was Big Steve the most underappreciated podcast producer in history? I honestly think so. Sometimes I go back and listen to old shows and just Steve's throwaway lines just on little things that they don't get remembered as iconic show moments because they're just Steve being weird, and it happens so frequently. But for instance, in that snake draft, when he took Muhammad as one name celebrities, like just his brain will always fascinate me. I hope he gets behind a microphone sometime soon. I'm the biggest Bravo fan in the world. I don't even think I could read a Bitcoin book. I mean, I don't think he could pay me to read a Bitcoin book. I'm just not interested in that stuff, but I'm sure it'll be good. I mean, he's a smart guy. But Mayo, I will say yes, he is the most underappreciated podcast producer in history. Final question. Red. It comes from Red across the street. It said, looking to flip 2 tickets to Mississippi. You can DM him for details. He's asking just above market value, just trying to make a little quick buck. Look, I said it's an open market earlier. I'm my hands off, try to stay out of people's pockets. If Red wants to flip the tickets for a profit and he can sleep at night, go ahead. I'm not going to get on my moral high horse. I'm not going to nail him for that. All right, let's close it out. Last segment, just some recce's, some recommendations. I don't have any movies or shows. I didn't see anything good this week. Nothing music-wise I've been super into, but I am excited that the Beyond Average boys are coming to the Kirk Minihan Network. Now, I only listen to the show for the parts they talk about KMS stuff. I don't really give a shit about their other takes. Every now and then I'll tap in for a segment or an interview, but I think their show on the Kirk Minihan Network should be separate from the regular show. I think they should go full KMS centered, take calls. I mean, Mick's a pretty good producer. He's good on air. I like Christian. I would add Al, the guy who called into the main show. I would add him as a permanent third mic. Just the greatest guy. I mean, he's not even on the podcast. He's just brothers with Mick, and he calls in all the time, defending their honor, advancing the brand. I mean, the guy is incredible. Get him on the show full time. But yes, everybody keep your eyes peeled for Beyond Average Podcast on Kirk Minihan Network. I'm glad I had a small hand in making that come to life. But yeah, just keep your eyes peeled for that. That's all I got this week. Hopefully we get something disastrous or terrible happening so I can try to get people fired. Or no, I'm just kidding. But hopefully next week, we get a little bit more spice, some breading on the chicken, because I'm not a grilled chicken guy. It's good every now and then, but week in, week out, I don't want it. All right, I'm out. Thanks, folks. See you later.